I'm Savannah Grace Bennett, 32, the older sister in our Scottsdale family. Last month at my parents' dinner table in North Scottsdale, the usual crowd was there. Mom, Dad, my younger brother Mason, our cousin Kaylee, who lives with them, and a few of their country club friends. I casually mentioned I was thinking about getting a new car. The entire table went silent for half a second, then exploded into laughter. Mom put her fork down and smirked. "You'll never have a car like your brother." Dad shook his head, chuckling. "Be realistic, Savannah. Stick to whatever you're doing on that computer." Mason leaned back in his chair, flashing that smug grin he always has next to his Porsche keys. "You'll always be broke, sis. Some things never change." Kaylee and the guests joined in the kind of laughter that makes the chandelier feel like it's shaking. I didn't say a word. Just smiled, tight-lipped, while my phone sat in my pocket holding a secret they couldn't even dream of. 3 weeks later, they all showed up at my place, eyes wide, staring at something in my driveway. I walked out, hit the button on the key fob, and sent them one simple text: "Get away from my car right now." They thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Hey, have you ever had your own family laugh in your face when you talked about your dreams? Drop your story in the comments, hit subscribe, and keep watching, because what happened next shut them up for good. Growing up in Scottsdale, our family looked perfect from the outside. We lived in a stucco house with a pool out back, spent weekends driving up to Sedona for Red Rock hikes, and every 4th of July we'd host huge barbecues where Dad grilled ribs and Mom made her famous peach cobbler. Those early years felt easy. Dad Robert Bennett worked as a commercial real estate broker and always had big plans for the future, while Mom Karen Bennett stayed home and kept everything running smoothly. I was the only kid for the first 5 years, and I soaked up every bit of attention they gave me. Dad taught me how to swing a golf club before I could spell my last name, and Mom signed me up for every summer camp the country club offered. Everything shifted the day my little brother Mason Cole Bennett was born. I still remember standing on tiptoes in the hospital hallway looking through the nursery glass at this tiny, screaming baby everyone suddenly revolved around. From that moment, the house changed. Mom's whole world became feedings and doctor visits, and Dad started talking about carrying on the family name and making sure the boy has every opportunity. I didn't understand it then, but the balance had already tipped. By the time Mason was walking, the difference was impossible to miss. When I was 10 and he was 5, Dad bought him a brand new electric mini Jeep for Christmas, bright red with real working headlights. I got a couple of sweaters and a savings bond. Mom said it was because boys need more hands-on things. I told myself it didn't matter. I still had my golf clubs, my friends at school, and the pool in the backyard. Middle school made the gap wider. I started getting interested in computers, staying after class to mess around with basic coding on the library PCs. When I told Dad I wanted to take programming electives in high school, he laughed it off. "Savannah girls don't need to bother with that stuff. Focus on your grades. Maybe get into ASU, meet a nice guy who can take care of you." Mom nodded along, adding that I should think about nursing or teaching something stable. Meanwhile, Mason got sent to the most expensive private academy in the valley the minute he turned 13. Dad bragged about it at every country club dinner. "We're investing in our son's future." I watched the money flow in one direction. Braces for Mason, no questions asked. Tutors when his grades slipped even though mine were higher. A brand new Mustang the day he got his learner's permit at 15 and a half. When I asked if I could get a used Civic for my 16th birthday, so I wouldn't have to keep borrowing Mom's SUV, Dad told me to earn it myself. Mom chimed in that cars were a boy thing, and I should be grateful they paid for my dance classes. I started working weekends at a smoothie shop near Fashion Square to save for community college, because Dad made it clear he wasn't paying for anything beyond in-state tuition, and only if I picked something practical. Mason, on the other hand, got full rides to every leadership camp and golf tournament in the state. Every report card of his, even the mediocre ones, ended up framed in the hallway. Mine stayed folded in a drawer. Our cousin Kaylee Morgan Bennett moved in with us right after high school when her parents split up. She was only a year younger than Mason and immediately became his biggest cheerleader. Whatever he wanted, she backed him up. If I tried to speak up at the dinner table, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Let the adults talk, Savannah." Mom and Dad never corrected her. By the time I graduated high school, the message was crystal clear. Mason was the future, and I was supposed to find a husband who could give me the lifestyle they were already giving him. I stopped asking for anything. I moved into a tiny apartment in Tempe, paid my own way through Maricopa Community College, and worked 3 jobs nights at a call center, weekends at the smoothie shop, and random graphic gigs online. Mom called once a month to check if I'd met anyone nice yet. Dad only called when he needed me to pick Mason up from somewhere, because his brand new truck was in the shop again. Those years taught me one thing: nobody in that house was going to hand me anything. So I started building my own path in silence, one line of code at a time, while they kept pouring everything into the sun they believed would make them proud. A few years after moving out, everything I did happened far away from that house. I transferred from community college to Arizona State online classes and kept stacking shifts: early mornings at a warehouse fulfillment center in Chandler, afternoons freelancing basic website fixes on Upwork, and late nights teaching myself real programming through YouTube and whatever free courses I could find. Sleep became optional. My apartment was a cramped 1-bedroom in Tempe with a folding table that doubled as my desk and dining area, but it was mine, paid for with money nobody else had a say in. That was when I met Tyler Grant Morrison at a local developer meetup held in a co-working space near Mill Avenue. He walked in wearing a faded startup hoodie, carrying a laptop covered in stickers, and started asking sharp questions about scaling server costs. We ended up talking until the lights shut off automatically. Tyler became the first person who saw code the same way I did, not as a hobby, but as a way out. A few months later, Haley Reese Campbell joined one of our late-night Discord calls after I posted a beta version of a tiny automation script in a Women in Tech Slack group. Haley had just left a soul-crushing corporate marketing job and could sell ice to a penguin. The 3 of us clicked instantly. We decided to build something real. The idea started simple. Small businesses were drowning in repetitive tasks: scheduling social posts, following up on leads, syncing inventory between Shopify and QuickBooks, all of it eating hours they didn't have. Big enterprise tools were overkill and overpriced, so we created Optiflow AI, a clean dashboard that connected everything with a few clicks and let smart workflows run themselves. I handled the back-end architecture and the actual AI models. Tyler optimized the infrastructure and kept costs low enough for bootstrapping, and Haley built the waitlist before we even had a landing page. We launched the very first version from my living room at 2 in the morning, high-fiving over cheap takeout and energy drinks. The early customers trickled in: an Etsy seller in Tucson, a boutique gym in Gilbert, a food truck owner who needed invoice reminders automated. Every time someone upgraded to paid, we screen shared the Stripe notification and laughed like we'd won the lottery. Word spread through Reddit threads and Facebook groups for e-commerce owners. Haley started posting short demo videos on TikTok that somehow caught the algorithm just right, and suddenly we were fielding hundreds of signups a week. Revenue crossed 6 figures faster than any of us expected. We moved out of coffee shops into a small office suite in Scottsdale Air Park, still bootstrapped, still turning down every investor who wanted too much equity. Tyler built custom dashboards that predicted churn before it happened. I kept pushing new AI features like smart email sequencing and dynamic pricing suggestions. Haley closed partnership deals with payment processors and accounting apps that sent us thousands of new users overnight. By the time the platform hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue, we were running on pure momentum, hiring our first couple of employees, and still keeping every detail quiet from anyone tied to my old life. Crossing 7 figures felt surreal. The bank account I once watched hover at a few $100s now refreshed with deposits I had to zoom out to read properly. Tyler and Haley were the only two people on Earth who knew the real numbers. We celebrated milestones with steaks at a quiet North Scottsdale spot, raising glasses to staying independent and proving the doubters wrong without ever naming who those doubters were. They became my chosen family, the ones who showed up for 18-hour debugging sessions and never once asked why I didn't talk about holidays at home. Optiflow AI kept growing. We added enterprise-grade security white-label options and agency accounts that brought in checks big enough to make accountants blink. Haley landed us on a couple of fastest-growing startups in Arizona lists that nobody in my family ever read. Tyler negotiated a server deal that slashed costs by 40% right as we scaled past 50,000 active users. I flew to conferences under the company name Spoke on panels about bootstrapping AI tools, and always flew home to the same quiet apartment because I wasn't ready to show any cards yet. The money piled up faster than I could have scripted. I paid off every penny of student debt in one click, set up proper health insurance for the team, and still watched the balance climb. Tyler kept saying we should celebrate bigger, maybe rent a track day or something ridiculous, but I smiled and told him the right moment hadn't arrived. Deep down, I already knew exactly what that moment would look like, and it wasn't about renting anything. Every Sunday dinner became its own kind of endurance test. I would pull into the circular driveway in North Scottsdale Park, my plain SUV behind Mason's gleaming Porsche, and walk through the front door knowing exactly how the next 3 hours would play out. The table was always set the same way: Mom's good china, Dad's golf trophies catching the light from the chandelier, and Mason already holding court from his usual seat. He bought the Porsche 911 Turbo S less than a year after graduating with a little help from a graduation loan that somehow never needed repaying. Dad made sure everyone in the room heard the story every single visit. How Mason closed his first big client, how the firm put him on the fast track, how proud they were to co-sign so he could get the exact color he wanted. Mom passed the mashed potatoes while adding details about the custom plates and the ceramic coating that cost more than my first year of rent. When the conversation inevitably turned to me, the temperature shifted. Mom would tilt her head with that familiar mix of pity and impatience. So Savannah still spending all day on the computer, Dad would chuckle into his wine. As long as the bills get paid right, though I still think you'd do better in something with real benefits. Mason never missed his cue. It's cute, sis. Playing around online. Some people just aren't built for the big leagues. Kaylee, sitting cross-legged at the end like she belonged there more than I did, would laugh loudest. Seriously, when are you going to get a real job instead of whatever that is? I learned early to keep answers short. A new feature rollout became just some updates. A partnership that added 6 figures in monthly revenue turned into things are steady. They filled the silence anyway, steering right back to Mason's latest courtroom win, or the new watch Dad helped him pick out at the Rolex boutique. One Sunday stood out only because the neighbors were invited. Mason arrived late, on purpose dead. At least she doesn't have to wear real clothes to work, and the neighbors chuckled along. I pushed food around my plate and counted the minutes until dessert, when attention would shift to Mom's famous cobbler, and I could slip out early. They never noticed I stopped bringing up new milestones. They never asked why my visits grew shorter. The pattern repeated week after week. Mason's life presented as proof of good choices, mine reduced to a cautionary footnote. Dad started leaving real estate listings on the table just in case I ever wanted something stable. Mom forwarded job postings for administrative roles at companies where Mason knew someone. Kaylee sent me TikTok dances with captions about when your sister still lives like a college student. I read them all, deleted them all, and kept showing up because some part of me still hoped one Sunday might feel different. Out. Their version of my life was easier for them, and arguing only gave them more material. So I sat through the ritual, smiled when expected, and drove home, with the taste of resentment sitting heavy on my tongue. Every insult, every eye roll, every backhanded comment became fuel I stored quietly. I had been refreshing a private dealer portal during a rare break coffee forgotten on the desk when the listing loaded a 2024 McLaren 765 LT Spider finished in silica white, with every carbon pack checked. The photos made the car look alive. Doors up, wheels turned just enough to show the ceramic brakes glowing orange. $550,000. I stared at the screen for maybe 10 seconds, then messaged the seller. Deposit wired before lunch. Full cash close. No financing, no games. Delivery scheduled for the following week. Tyler walked past my door right as the confirmation email arrived. He backed up, read the subject line over my shoulder, and just started laughing in the way only he does when he knows something big is coming. Haley burst in 5 minutes later holding 2 celebratory lattes she had run out to grab the moment Tyler texted her. They both understood this purchase wasn't about transportation. It was the period at the end of a very long sentence I had been writing alone. The garage came next. I signed a lease on a contemporary house tucked deep in Silverleaf, where the driveways disappear behind gates and the neighbors mind their own business. The property already had a detached 6-car showroom with glass doors and polished concrete, but it needed to feel like an extension of everything I had built. Carlos Javier Ruiz came highly recommended from a collector friend in Paradise Valley. He showed up in a spotless work truck, took one look at the empty space, and started talking airflow drainage slopes and museum-grade LED arrays. We designed it: clean matte black cabinets along one wall, a hydraulic lift in the corner, recessed floor lighting that could change color temperature, and a floating turntable in the center so the car could rotate slowly for photos or just for the satisfaction of watching it move without going anywhere. While the crew installed everything, Haley and I shaped the reveal. A simple housewarming felt too quiet. We decided on the desert supercar rally one morning, 50 invited cars, a closed desert route starting from the resort pavilion, all entry donations going straight to STEM scholarships for girls in Title I schools. The foundation loved the idea immediately. Invitations went out on heavy black stock with silver lettering, no host name, listed just the date, the cause, and exclusive display of a very special new arrival. I addressed one envelope by hand to my parents' address in North Scottsdale. Inside, the same card as everyone else with a small handwritten note on the back: "Would love for you all to be my guests." Gate code attached. Mom called that evening asking if I was managing the event for one of my tech bosses. Dad wanted to know if parking would be valet because Mason hated desert dust on his Porsche. Kaylee sent a string of heart-eye emojis and asked if any influencers were coming. I kept every answer short and vague. The McLaren arrived on an enclosed transporter exactly on schedule. They backed it down the ramp like artwork, plastic still on the seats, that new carbon smell mixing with the desert heat. I signed the final papers, took the key, and pressed the start button for the first time. The night before, I walked the finished garage one last time. The other 5 bays sat empty on purpose, spotlights hitting nothing, drawing every eye to the single car on the turntable. The foundation signage glowed softly on the walls. Tyler and Haley had left hours earlier after a quiet toast. I ran my fingers along the cool roof, felt the weight of what tomorrow meant settle in. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about walking into a room I controlled and watching years of dismissal evaporate in real time. Guests would begin arriving at 10 sharp. My family's names sat at the very top of the list. They still assumed I was the hired help for someone with real money. I killed the lights, set the alarm, and drove home in the plain SUV nobody ever looked at twice. Tomorrow, the story changed. The morning of the rally arrived perfect and hot. By 9:30, the resort pavilion already hummed with quiet money. Valets in white shirts moved Lamborghinis and 488 Pistas into neat rows, while owners stood in small clusters comparing spec sheets and ceramic coatings. Photographers drifted through the crowd, grabbing clean shots against the red rock backdrop, and the foundation table collected checks before most people had finished their first coffee. Haley moved like she owned the place, which in every way that mattered, she did, making sure every banner sat straight and every sponsor felt important. I wore a simple black linen dress that cost more than most people's rent, hair pulled back, no jewelry except the key fob on a thin carbon fiber bracelet. Tyler stayed near the garage entrance, handling last-second radio chatter with security. Everything felt locked in. Mom, Dad, Mason, and Kaylee rolled up right at 10 in Mason's black Porsche 911 Turbo S. I watched from the shade as the valet took the keys, and Mason spent a full minute brushing imaginary dust off the hood. Mom stepped out in sunglasses too big for her face, scanning the crowd like she was looking for the real owner. Dad wore his usual golf polo, already nodding at people he recognized from the club. Kaylee filmed everything on her phone, narrating for her stories about this insane private car thing Savannah somehow got us into. They spotted me near the champagne table and walked over with the same expression people wear when they think they're about to be introduced to someone important. Mom spoke first, voice low. "Sweetie, whose event is this exactly?" The security wouldn't tell us anything. Dad glanced around at the cars. "Looks like serious money. You coordinating for one of your tech clients?" Mason smirked, arms crossed. "Yeah, sis. Nice gig. Must pay better than whatever you do on your laptop." Kaylee leaned in, eyes wide. "Are there any influencers here?" "This is legit insane." I just smiled and handed them each a program. "Grab a drink." The main display opens in 10 minutes. They took the programs but stayed close still, waiting for the big introduction that never came. More guests arrived, local collectors, a couple of minor celebrities who kept it low-key, a few executives from the sponsor companies. The energy built naturally, everyone circling toward the closed glass garage doors, where the turntable lights glowed faintly behind tinted windows. At 10:15 sharp, Haley tapped a glass, and the crowd quieted. She welcomed everyone, thanked the sponsors, announced the preliminary donation total, already over $200,000, and explained that the centerpiece car had been kept under wraps for exactly this moment. Then she turned to me. I walked to the small stage, took the microphone, and let the silence sit just long enough. "Thank you all for coming out and supporting the foundation. This rally only happened because of your generosity, and every dollar goes straight to girls who code the next generation who won't have to prove anything to anyone." I paused, looked directly at my family standing near the front, and continued. "The car you're about to see isn't on loan. It isn't a sponsor favor. It's mine. I bought the McLaren 765 LT Spider behind those doors with cash last month because Optiflow AI, the company I built from nothing, makes that possible." The glass doors began rising slowly on their tracks. Spotlights hit the silica white paint, and the car rotated once under the LEDs. Doors lifted like wings, engine off, but still somehow loud in the silence that followed. Gas cameras clicked. A low ripple of approval moved through the crowd, people who knew exactly what they were looking at and what it cost. Someone started clapping, then the whole pavilion joined in. My family didn't move. Mom's hand went to her mouth, sunglasses sliding down her nose. Dad's face went the color of the desert sand, mouth half open like he forgot how words worked. Mason stared at the car, then at me, then back at the car. The smirk gone, like someone had wiped it off with solvent. Kaylee's phone hung forgotten at her side, recording nothing. I kept the microphone. "Every Sunday for years you told me computers weren't real work, that I should find something stable, that I'd never have anything like Mason. I let that land. Well, here we are." The applause picked up again. A couple of collectors came over to congratulate me, asking questions about delivery miles and options packages. Haley steered a photographer my way for shots next to the car. Tyler just stood off to the side, grinning like he'd won a bet with himself. My family stayed rooted near the champagne table long after the crowd moved on. Mom tried to smile when someone asked if she was my mother. She managed a nod. Dad kept clearing his throat like he was about to speak, but never found the words. Mason looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Kaylee finally put her phone away. I didn't go rescue them. I signed a few foundation posters posed for pictures with the scholarship kids who had been invited as special guests, and let the morning roll forward exactly as planned. Their laughter from all those dinners had finally run out of air. 3 weeks later, my doorbell camera pinged at 2 in the morning. I paused the code review I was finishing, pulled up the feed, and saw all 4 of them standing under the motion lights. Mom held a thin cardigan closed against the chill. Dad stared at his shoes. Mason kept running a hand through unwashed hair, and Kaylee hovered behind them like she wasn't sure she belonged. No Porsche in sight, just an older sedan parked crooked at the gate. I slipped on shoes and walked out without turning on the house lights. The desert night carried that sharp drop in temperature that always surprises people who think Arizona is hot 24/7. They heard my footsteps on the gravel and turned as one. Mom started first, voice shaking. Savannah. We're so sorry for the hour, but we didn't know where else to go. Dad cleared his throat. Mason got in over his head with some cryptocurrency trades. He used margin and we co-signed thinking it was safe. The market crashed hard. Mason finally met my eyes. The confident posture was gone, replaced by slumped shoulders and dark circles. I'm wiped out. The brokerage liquidated everything. They're coming for the car in days if I can't settle the deficit. Kaylee stayed silent, arms crossed tight. Mom's tears started. We took a home equity line to try and cover it, but the numbers are bigger than we thought. The bank is already sending notices. Dad pulled a folded paper from his pocket, the kind with official letterhead. 420,000 would stop the bleeding. We'll sign anything, pay interest, whatever you need. You're in a position to help now. Mason tried for the old charm. Come on, sis. Family looks out for family. That McLaren proves you've got it to spare. I looked at the paper in Dad's hand, then at the dark garage behind me. The silence stretched long enough for the crickets to fill it. No. Mom made a small wounded sound. Dad's face went slack. Mason took half a step forward like he might argue, then stopped. I clicked the fob once. The garage doors rose smoothly, interior lights coming up in stages until the McLaren sat fully illuminated, white paint catching every LED like it was made of glass. Mason's eyes locked on it the same way they had at the rally, only this time, no crowd buffered the moment. I met his stare. Get away from my car right now. He stepped back like the words carried weight. Mom reached for me, then let her hand fall. We didn't know how far you'd come. We were wrong about everything. Please. You knew enough to laugh every Sunday. You knew enough to tell me computers weren't real work. You knew enough to put every dollar into him and call it smart parenting. Dad tried one last time, voice cracking. He's your brother. I clicked the fob again. The doors lowered with a soft thud, lights fading until only the motion floods remained. You made your choices. Live with them. They stood another minute, maybe 2, then shuffled back to the sedan. No one spoke. The taillights disappeared down the private road, and that was the last time any of them stood on edge. Conversations shifted when they walked up. The story had made its way through enough group chats. The golden son who bet the house literally and lost. I blocked every number, every new account, every email forward. Birthdays passed unmarked. Holidays too. The space they left stayed empty on purpose. Tyler and Haley became the family I chose. We marked new funding rounds with track days, new features with quiet dinners where no one compared anyone to anyone else. The garage filled one bay at a time with cars I paid for myself. No co-signers, no lectures. Some nights I take the McLaren out alone, top down, the exhaust note bouncing off empty desert canyons. The weight of all those Sundays is gone, replaced by something lighter and truer. Their world shrank to fit the choices they made. Mine grew to fit the ones I did. If you've ever been the one written off while someone else got the spotlight, know this: The people who can't see your worth when you're building it usually can't handle it when you finish. Protect your peace. Build anyway. The right people will pull up a chair without being asked. Thank you for sticking with me to the end of this story. If any part of it hit close to home, drop your own experience in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more stories like this.